So, would you say the world that we live in, would you say that it's perfect or that it's broken?
Broken.
Broken. I agree. All you got to do is look at the news and see what's happening in Syria right now, civil war, what's happening in Yemen. You even can see this kind of brokenness in our own families and even sometimes in ourselves. But God didn't create the world to be broken like this. God made the world perfectly. He made people for the purpose of having a love relationship with him, and he made Adam and Eve, and he put them in the garden. And you remember there was one rule that he gave to Adam and Eve that he told them not to do. You remember what it was?
Mm-hmm. Don't eat the fruit of the tree.
Don't eat the fruit of the tree. But what'd they do?
They ate it.
They ate it. That's right. And so God banished Adam and Eve from paradise into this broken world. And ever since then, people have been trying to escape this brokenness. Some people try to escape brokenness by being a good person in order to work their way back into God's paradise, but it's not good enough. Others try to work their way back into God's paradise by following the 5 pillars, but it's not good enough. We can't do it good enough. And people try to escape brokenness through other means, like making a lot of money and becoming successful, or through relationships, or through drugs and alcohol. But none of these things actually solve the problem. They all lead us back to more brokenness. And God sees this problem, and he has provided one true path for us to come back to him into his paradise. And he's shown us this one true path through his prophets. So when Adam and Eve, when they ate the fruit, their eyes were opened and they saw they were naked, and they made clothes for themselves. But the clothes they made for themselves weren't good enough. And so God sacrificed a lamb in order to make clothes for Adam and Eve. And this sacrifice, God made this sacrifice to cover Adam and Eve's shame. And then we see another sign through prophet Abraham, or Ibrahim. Prophet Ibrahim, God commanded him to sacrifice his son. And Ibrahim was about to sacrifice his son, and right before he sacrificed his son, the angel of God stopped him. And God provided a replacement sacrifice. And God allowed for a lamb to be sacrificed in the place of Ibrahim's son. And so God provided this sacrifice to deliver Ibrahim's son from death. And then we see a sign in the life of Prophet Moses, or Moses. During the days of Prophet Moses, the people of Israel were in slavery in Egypt. And God commanded Moses to tell the people to sacrifice a lamb. They were to sacrifice this lamb and put the blood of the lamb on their doorpost. And whoever put the blood of the lamb on their doorpost was going to be saved from the destruction that God was bringing on the Egyptians. And God brought this destruction on the Egyptians, but people who put the blood of the lamb on their doorpost, their children were saved from the destruction. And God provided this sacrifice to deliver his people from slavery. And there was another prophet named Daud, or David. And this prophet was a king. And God made a promise to prophet Daud. He promised him that one of his descendants would sit on his throne forever. And this son of David, his name is Isa al-Masih. And Isa was born of a virgin. And Isa lived a completely righteous life. And he performed miracles. He opened the eyes of the blind. He opened the ears of the deaf. He raised the dead. He even had power over nature. One time he was in a boat with his disciples, and there was a great storm on the sea. And Isa, he said, "Peace, be still." And the storm ceased. And all those in the boat with him said, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey his voice?" And we see prophet Yahya. Yahya, when he saw Isa, he said, "Behold, this is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." Now, isn't it interesting that Yahya, who we know is a prophet, would call Isa a lamb? We know he's a man. Why would he say this? It's because God allowed Isa to become the true lamb and the true sacrifice that would cover our shame, deliver us from death, deliver us from slavery, and reign forever as king. And Isa did this by dying on a cross for our sin. He took our punishment and our judgment. And after 3 days, Isa rose from the dead because he is stronger than death. And God fulfilled the promise that he made to Prophet Dawood by crowning Isa as king over all things. And Isa tells us that we should turn from our brokenness and from our own efforts and follow his way, the true path that leads us back to God, and that he will restore us to God's paradise, and we will grow in God's ways. Now, where do you feel like you are when you see this picture? Do you feel like you are living in God's design, or do you feel like you are living in brokenness?
Brokenness.
Well, are you willing to put your trust and your faith in the path of God's prophets and follow Isa as your king? Or are you going to reject Isa along with all of God's prophets?
When you put it that way, I think I'll accept Jesus.
Hallelujah.